The restaurant glimmers with candlelight, every surface polished to perfection. Across the table, Ethan fidgets with the stem of his wine glass, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallows hard. Something about tonight feels different. 6 years together, and I've never seen him this nervous. I adjust my hearing aid discreetly, a habit as natural as breathing. The device nestles behind my right ear, nearly invisible beneath my copper curls, but ever present, like Ethan himself. "Mara," he says, voice wavering slightly. "I want to tell you something." His hand reaches across the white tablecloth, fingers trembling. I place mine in his, feeling the familiar calluses from his years of playing guitar. "Not here," he continues, looking around at the other diners. "Can we step outside for a minute?" "There's a garden terrace." I nod, smoothing down my navy dress as I stand. My heart quickens as he leads me through the restaurant to a secluded corner of the outdoor terrace. Fairy lights twinkling overhead against the darkening sky. Ethan turns to face me, his green eyes reflecting the soft lights. I've memorized every detail of his face over our years together. The small scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident. The crinkles that appear at the corners of his eyes when he smiles. The stubborn cowlick in his dark hair. "Mara, you know how much I love you," he begins, taking both my hands in his. Something shifts in his expression, a decision crystallizing. He reaches up slowly, his fingers brushing against my hair, then gently behind my ear. I feel him carefully removing my hearing aid, a gesture so intimate that tears spring to my eyes. "I want you to hear this," he whispers, leaning close, with nothing between us. He doesn't know. He doesn't know that 7 days ago, during a routine checkup, my audiologist had stared at her instruments in disbelief before running the tests again. "Mara, this is unprecedented," she had said, voice tinged with academic excitement. "The experimental treatment from 2 years ago. It seems to have triggered a delayed regenerative response in your cochlear hair cells." He doesn't know that for the past week. I've been wearing my hearing aid out of habit, out of comfort, out of fear of embracing a miracle that might disappear as suddenly as it arrived. He doesn't know that as he removes the small device from behind my ear, believing he's rendering me nearly deaf for this moment. I can hear everything. The string quartet playing Debussy inside the restaurant. The soft rustle of wind through the potted plants, the nervous catch in his breathing, and then, crystal clear, as he lowers himself to one knee and reaches into his pocket, I hear his whispered words. "I hope you can read my lips, because I want you to understand exactly what I'm saying. I've been practicing signing this, but I want you to see my face when I ask." My hand flies to my mouth as he opens the small velvet box. "Mara Louise Bennett, will you marry me?" Every word, perfect and unmuffled, rings in my ears with devastating clarity. 8 years earlier, I hadn't always needed a hearing aid. Life had been a symphony of sounds, laughter with friends during late-night study sessions at Columbia, my mother's voice singing softly while cooking Sunday dinner, the crisp turning of pages in the university library. I'd been studying linguistics, fascinated by the musicality of language, the rhythms of human communication. I met Ethan during my junior year, at a fundraiser for the university's arts program. He was a music composition major with a minor in education, tall and slightly awkward, with a habit of running his hand through his hair when he was thinking. The first time I saw him, he was debating passionately with a professor about accessibility in music education. Music isn't just for people with perfect pitch or those who can afford lessons from age 3, he'd insisted, his voice carrying across the reception hall. It's a fundamental human language. Everyone deserves access. I'd been immediately drawn to his intensity, the way his hands moved expressively as he spoke. Later that evening, when he'd approached me with 2 glasses of champagne and an apologetic smile, I'd felt something click into place. "I'm Ethan Mercer," he'd said. "I noticed you were stuck talking to Dean Williams for 40 minutes. I figured you might need this." He'd offered the champagne with a crooked smile. "Mara Bennett," I'd replied, accepting the glass. And it was 43 minutes, actually. I counted. His laugh had been warm, genuine. A woman who appreciates precision. You must not be a music major. Linguistics. I study how we communicate. Words instead of notes. He'd nodded. Same church, different pew. We'd talked until the event staff began stacking chairs around us. He'd walked me to my apartment, and before saying goodnight, had asked if I'd be willing to help with a project he was working on, a study of tonal patterns in spoken language versus musical composition. Our collaboration had quickly evolved into coffee dates, then dinners, then weekends spent exploring New York City. Ethan saw the world through sound. He could identify birds by their calls, knew which subway lines needed maintenance by the pitch of the rails, could tell what mood I was in by the rhythm of my footsteps. The accident happened during winter break of my senior year. A patch of black ice on the highway, a truck driver who'd been on the road too long, and the crumpling of metal that would forever divide my life into before and after. I woke up in the hospital with my mother clutching my hand. Tear tracks dried on her cheeks. The doctor explained in careful, measured tones: traumatic brain injury, damage to the auditory nerve, profound hearing loss in my left ear, moderate to severe in my right. Will it get better? I'd asked, my own voice sounding strange and distant. The neurologist's expression had said everything before his words did. The damage appears permanent, Ms. Bennett. We can discuss options for hearing aids and other assistive technologies, but you should prepare for this to be your new normal. My world contracted overnight. The linguistics program that had once been my passion suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. How could I study the sounds of language when they were slipping away from me? Ethan visited every day, bringing books and my favorite tea in a thermos. On the third day, as I sat staring blankly at the muted television, he'd placed a notebook in my lap. "I've been researching," he said, speaking slowly so I could read his lips, a skill I was desperately trying to develop. "There are amazing technologies now. Hearing aids that can connect to your phone, cochlear implants if it comes to that. And his voice had caught. "I've enrolled in a course on American Sign Language." I'd pushed the notebook away. "Don't bother. We both know this changes everything." "The only thing it changes," he'd said, leaning in close, making sure I could see his face clearly, "is that I'll have to find new ways to tell you I love you." In the months that followed, as I struggled with depression and the brutal learning curve of adaptation, Ethan remained steady. He transferred to a graduate program in New York so he could stay close, finding a job teaching music at an elementary school for children with disabilities. Every evening, he practiced ASL with me, even though my right ear, with assistance, could still process speech. When I abandoned linguistics for a more practical degree in educational counseling, he never once suggested I was giving up. Instead, he helped me see how my experience could become an asset, how I could help others navigate the sudden shifts that life sometimes demands. By the time we moved in together, 3 years after the accident, we had developed our own language of small gestures and shared meanings. I'd learned to read not just his lips but the micro-expressions that crossed his face, the tension in his shoulders, the cadence of his movements. He'd learned when to face me while speaking, when to touch my arm gently to get my attention, how to position himself in crowded rooms so I could follow conversations. My hearing aid became a part of me, an expensive, sometimes temperamental extension that needed batteries and adjustments, but gave me access to a world that had started to fade. I wore it from the moment I woke until I went to sleep, removing it only to shower or swim. Ethan never seemed bothered by it. If anything, he was more attentive than most hearing people, always making sure environments were accessible for me, advocating fiercely when restaurants seated us beneath speakers, or when theaters didn't offer captioning services. 2 years ago, my audiologist had mentioned an experimental treatment, a gene therapy combined with stem cell research that was showing promise in regenerating damaged hair cells in the inner ear. The success rate was low, the procedure expensive and not covered by insurance, but something in me had yearned to try, to grasp at even the smallest chance of improvement. Ethan had supported me completely, helping me navigate the mountains of paperwork, taking time off work to drive me to appointments 3 states away. When the initial results showed no change, he'd held me as I cried, whispering that it didn't matter, that he loved me exactly as I was. We had moved on, settled into our routines. I'd built a successful practice as an educational counselor specializing in students with sudden disabilities. Ethan had been promoted to music department head at his school and was developing an innovative curriculum for children across the neurological spectrum. Our life together was good, comfortable, loving, built on a foundation of mutual respect and adaptation. If you had asked me a month ago, I would have said we had conquered the challenges thrown our way, that we had found our equilibrium. Then came the routine follow-up appointment last week. The one where my audiologist had stared at her computer screen with disbelief, then asked to run the tests again. "Mara," she'd said, her professional composure cracking slightly, "I'm seeing significant regeneration in the cochlear hair cells, particularly in your right ear. The treatment from 2 years ago, it appears to have created a delayed response. Your hearing has improved dramatically." I'd sat frozen, unable to process her words. "What does that mean?" "It means," she'd said slowly, "that your right ear is now registering in the mild hearing loss range rather than moderate to severe. And there's even some improvement in your left. This is unprecedented with this therapy. We need to document this carefully." She'd adjusted my hearing aid to a much lower setting, explaining that my brain would need time to adapt to the increased auditory input. "You might find things sound too loud at first, or that you have trouble filtering background noise. It's like suddenly turning up the volume after years of listening to everything at level 3. I'd walked out of her office in a daze, sounds assaulting me from all directions, the squeak of a nurse's shoes on the linoleum, the hum of the air conditioning, someone's phone conversation 2 hallways over. By the time I reached my car, I was trembling, overwhelmed by the sensory input. That night, I tried to tell Ethan, sitting him down at our kitchen table after dinner. But as he looked at me with those attentive green eyes, something had stopped me. A small, irrational fear had taken root. What if this miracle was temporary? What if I told him and then had to watch his hope crumble when my hearing deteriorated again? Or worse, what if something fundamentally changed between us? Our relationship had been built around my hearing loss, his patience, my adaptations, our mutual understanding of its challenges. What would happen if that cornerstone was suddenly removed? "What is it, Mara?" he'd asked, concern etching his features. I'd faltered. "I had my checkup today. Everything's fine." He'd studied me for a moment, knowing me well enough to sense there was more. "Are you sure? You seem shaken." "Just tired," I'd lied. "It brings up a lot, you know." "Thinking about the accident, the what-ifs." He'd nodded, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "I understand. But we're good, right? We built something beautiful from all that chaos." "We did," I'd agreed, pushing down the guilt. "We absolutely did." For the past week, I'd been living in a strange limbo, wearing my hearing aid out of habit and comfort, but aware of the sounds filtering in around its edges. I'd been startled by birds singing in the morning, had found myself turning down the volume on the television, had caught snippets of conversations from across the street. I'd meant to tell him. Each night, I'd gone to bed thinking, tomorrow, I'll tell him tomorrow. But tomorrow kept becoming today, and the words wouldn't come. Part of me wanted to savor this miracle privately before sharing it, to understand what it meant for me before figuring out what it meant for us. And now, kneeling before me under twinkling lights on a restaurant terrace, Ethan removes my hearing aid, believing he's plunging me into near silence for the most important question of our relationship. "Mara Louise Bennett, will you marry me?" His voice is clear, beautiful, no longer filtered through the processing of my hearing aid. Raw emotion makes the words tremble slightly as they hang in the evening air. The small diamond in the ring catches the light, but it's the hope in Ethan's eyes that truly shines. I stand frozen, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Joy at his proposal, wonder at hearing it so clearly, guilt at my week-long deception, fear of what happens next. "Mara?" Concern creeps into his expression as I remain silent. He reaches for my hearing aid, still in his palm, assuming I didn't understand. "I'm sorry, here—" "Yes," I say, my voice catching. Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you. Relief floods his face as he slides the ring onto my finger with slightly shaking hands. He stands and pulls me into an embrace, his heart pounding against mine. I bury my face in his neck, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne, trying to steady myself against the storm of emotions. I love you, he whispers against my hair, then pulls back, carefully replacing my hearing aid. I wanted that moment to be just us, nothing between us. But I know you need this. The irony of his statement hits me like a physical blow. I should tell him now. This moment of joy should be honest. But as he beams at me, radiant with happiness, the words stick in my throat. Let's go home, I manage instead. I want to celebrate privately. He raises an eyebrow, misinterpreting my meaning in a way that makes my cheeks flush. Whatever the future Mrs. Mercer wants. The guilt intensifies at the title. Mrs. Mercer, a future built on a foundation that now includes a lie of omission. We pay the bill and catch a taxi home, his arm around me, fingers playing absently with the ends of my hair. In the darkness of the cab, I close my eyes, focusing on the sounds around me. The driver's quiet humming, the rush of air through the vents, the muffled honking of distant traffic. Sounds I wouldn't have registered a week ago, at least not with this clarity. Our apartment welcomes us with familiar comfort. The slightly creaky third floorboard in the hallway, the gentle whir of the refrigerator, the tick of the vintage wall clock Ethan found at a flea market. He moves around the space with practiced ease, uncorking a bottle of champagne he must have chilled before our dinner. I had this waiting, just in case you said yes, he explains, pouring 2 glasses. Did you really think I might say no? I ask, slipping off my heels and curling onto our worn leather sofa. He hands me a glass, his expression turning serious. I wasn't sure. Sometimes I wonder if you resent me for staying, if you ever think I'm with you out of some misplaced sense of duty. What? Ethan, no, I protest, genuinely shocked. Why would you think that? He sits beside me, running a hand through his hair, that familiar nervous gesture. You tried to push me away after the accident, and sometimes I still catch you looking at me with this expression, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. The accuracy of his observation stuns me into silence. Even after all these years, there has been a part of me waiting for him to realize that life would be easier with someone else, someone whole. That's about me, I say finally. My insecurities. It has nothing to do with how I feel about you or us. He nods slowly. I know. But I wanted to make it official, to show you I'm all in. Hearing aid, sign language, specialist appointments, all of it. Whatever comes our way? His sincerity breaks something open inside me. He's offering his future to me, the real me, the one he believes I am. Doesn't he deserve the same honesty in return? I take a deep breath. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. He tilts his head, giving me his full attention, the way he always does. Body turned toward mine. Eyes focused, no distractions. Last week, at my checkup, I hesitate, then push forward. The treatment from 2 years ago, it worked. Just delayed. His brows furrow in confusion. What do you mean, worked? I reach up and remove my hearing aid, placing it on the coffee table between us. My hearing has improved, significantly. The hair cells are regenerating, especially in my right ear. He stares at the small device, then at me, disbelief written across his features. You can hear better? Since when? How much better? Since last week. And a lot better. My right ear is now in the mild loss range. Even my left has shown some improvement. I swallow hard. When you took off my hearing aid at the restaurant, I heard every word you said. Perfectly. His expression shifts rapidly. Confusion, then dawning comprehension, followed by hurt. You've been wearing your hearing aid all week even though you don't need it as much. Why wouldn't you tell me something like that? The pain in his voice makes me wince. I was going to. I needed time to process it myself first. And then it became this thing that I hadn't told you, and the longer I waited... A week, Mara. He stands up, pacing our small living room. We've shared everything for 6 years. I thought we did anyway. We do, I insist, rising to follow him. This was different. I was afraid. He turns to face me, expression hardening. Afraid of what exactly? That I'd be happy for you? That I'd support you through another change, just like I have every other time? No, I was afraid it might not last, I say, voice rising. I didn't want to get your hopes up. I didn't want to get my hopes up. And I was afraid of what? He presses, that things would change between us. The words burst out of me. Our entire relationship has been built around adapting to my hearing loss. It's shaped everything, how we communicate, how we navigate the world. What if that changed who we are together? He stares at me incredulous. You think I'm with you because of your hearing loss? That somehow I'd love you less if you could hear better? No, not less. I struggle to articulate the fear that had seemed so reasonable in my head but sounds absurd when spoken aloud. Different. Like we'd lose something that's been fundamental to us. The only thing fundamental to us is trust, Mara, he says quietly. And you just shook that pretty thoroughly. The truth of his words hits me with physical force. All my convoluted reasoning suddenly seems like the self-serving justification it was. I'm sorry, I whisper. I made a mistake. You let me remove your hearing aid tonight, believing I was creating this intimate moment between us, he continues, his voice tight with controlled emotion. You let me think I was doing something special, when really it was. What, theatrical? Unnecessary? It was special, I insist, reaching for him, but he steps back. Ethan, please. I should have told you right away. I know that now, he shakes his head slowly. I need some air. He moves toward the door, grabbing his jacket from the hook. Wait, I say, panic rising. Can we please talk about this? That's the irony, isn't it? He says, hand on the doorknob. Now that you can hear me better than ever, I'm not sure what to say. He pauses, then adds softly, Congratulations on your healing, Mara. I mean that sincerely. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to share it. The door closes behind him with a quiet click that seems to echo in the sudden silence of our apartment. I sink back onto the sofa, the champagne forgotten, the engagement ring heavy on my finger. In trying to preserve what we had, I've jeopardized everything. 3 hours later, I'm still on the sofa, now wrapped in a blanket, staring at my silent phone. I've texted Ethan twice. First a simple, I'm sorry, then a longer message explaining that I was afraid of disrupting the delicate balance we'd achieved, that I'd convinced myself I was protecting both of us. No response. I pick up my hearing aid from the coffee table, turning it over in my hands. This small device has been my constant companion for years, a necessary interface between me and the world. Now its significance is shifting, becoming symbolic rather than essential. The sound of a key in the lock makes me look up. Ethan enters quietly, his face drawn and tired. He sees me on the sofa and stops just inside the doorway, as if uncertain of his welcome in our shared space. You're back, I say, the relief in my voice unmistakable. I walk to the park and back, twice. He removes his jacket and hangs it up, his movements deliberate. I needed to think. I nod, giving him space to continue. He crosses to sit in the armchair opposite me, maintaining a physical distance that hurts more than his absence did. I need to understand something. Were you ever going to tell me? Yes, I answer immediately. I just kept waiting for the right moment. And tonight, wasn't it? When I was literally asking you to spend your life with me? I flinch at the justified accusation. I should have told you then. I wanted to share your joy without complicating it. But that was wrong, he sighs, rubbing his temples. Do you know what hurts the most? It's not that you kept this from me for a week. It's what that says about how you see us. What do you mean? You were afraid that if your hearing improved, something essential about our relationship would change. His voice is quiet but intent, as if what we have is so fragile, so contingent on your disability, that it might not survive you getting better. Put that way, my fears sound absurd, even insulting. That's not, isn't it? He interrupts. You literally said you were afraid things would change between us if your hearing improved. What am I supposed to take from that? except that you believe I'm somehow invested in your disability. No, I shake my head vehemently. That's not what I meant. I was afraid of losing the intimacy we've built around my limitations. The way you've learned to face me when you speak, how we position ourselves in restaurants, the sign language we share. Those aren't limitations, Mara, they're adaptations. His voice rises slightly, and they're not going anywhere unless we choose to let them go. Do you think I'm going to suddenly start mumbling because your hearing got better? Stop facing you when we talk? Forget everything I've learned about making the world accessible for you? The genuine hurt in his question makes my chest ache. Of course not. I've defined myself by my hearing loss for so long. It's shaped my career, my relationships, how I move through the world. If that changes, even partially, then you adapt again, he says firmly. That's what you do. What we do. Together. A tear slides down my cheek. I was scared, I admit, my voice small. Not just of what would change between us, but of hoping too much. What if this improvement is temporary? What if I let myself believe in this miracle and then it disappears? His expression softens slightly. So you decided not to tell me because you were protecting yourself from disappointment? Yes, and I hesitate, then force myself to voice the deeper fear. I was protecting our relationship from my own resentment. If my hearing improves and then deteriorates again, I don't want to resent you for witnessing my hope and then my loss. I don't want that bitterness between us. Ethan is quiet for a long moment, absorbing my words. Then he moves from the armchair to sit beside me on the sofa, still maintaining a few inches of space between us. Mara, do you remember what I told you in the hospital, after the accident? I nod slowly. That you'd find new ways to tell me you love me? Exactly. And I have, haven't I? Through everything. The surgeries that didn't work, the therapies that exhausted you, the specialist who gave conflicting advice. I've been there. Not because I pitied you or because I felt obligated, but because I love you. I know that, I whisper. Do you? Because hiding this from me suggests you don't trust that my love is unconditional, that it somehow depends on you being a certain way, hearing less, needing me in a specific way. His words strike at the heart of my insecurity, the one I've carried since the accident. The fear that I'm lovable only through the lens of resilience, only as the woman who overcame tragedy. I've never doubted your love, I say carefully. I've doubted whether I deserve it. That's not your decision to make, he responds, a flash of anger returning. You don't get to decide what I deserve in a partner or what kind of love I want to give. You're right, I acknowledge. But can you understand why I was afraid? Everything about us has been shaped by my hearing loss. Our routines, our communication, even how we navigate intimacy. Yes, and it will continue to be shaped by whatever comes next, he insists. If your hearing improves permanently, we'll adapt. If it fluctuates, we'll adapt. If it deteriorates again, we'll adapt. That's what relationships are, Mara. Continuous adaptation. His words penetrate the protective shell I've built around my fears. I should have trusted you with this, I admit. I should have trusted us. Yes, you should have. He doesn't soften the truth, but his tone loses some of its edge. We've spent 6 years building a foundation of honesty and communication. You had an opportunity to strengthen that foundation, and instead you chose to undermine it. The accuracy of his assessment makes me wince. I'm sorry, Ethan. Truly sorry, he sighs, rubbing his face with both hands. I believe you, but I'm still hurt and confused about what happens now. I look down at the engagement ring glittering on my finger, then back at him. What do you want to happen? I want to marry you, he says simply. That hasn't changed. But I need to know that you're all in. That you trust me enough to share both the good and the bad, not just the parts of yourself you think I want to see. I am all in, I say, reaching for his hand. This time he doesn't pull away. I made a mistake, a serious one. But I promise you, Ethan, I will never hide anything like this from you again. He intertwines his fingers with mine, studying our joined hands. I need you to understand something fundamental, Mara. I didn't fall in love with your hearing loss. I fell in love with your mind, your heart, your resilience, your humor, all the things that make you who you are. The hearing loss is just a circumstance, not your identity. I know that intellectually, I admit. But emotionally, it's been harder to separate. Then that's something we work on together. He squeezes my hand gently. Because I need you to believe that my love for you isn't dependent on any physical condition. I do believe that, I say. I just forgot for a moment. Let my fears take over. He nods slowly, processing. Can I ask you something? Anything. How does it feel? Hearing better? The simple question, asked with such genuine curiosity, breaks through the last of my defenses. A smile spreads across my face, tentative but real. It's overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying. I search for words to describe the experience. It's like, for years I've been seeing the world in muted colors, and suddenly everything is vivid again. I can hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen. I can distinguish your footsteps from our upstairs neighbors. This morning, I heard a cardinal singing outside our window and nearly cried. His expression softens further, a small smile tugging at his lips. That sounds amazing. It is, I agree. But it's also disorienting. My brain got used to processing sound a certain way, filtering and focusing with limited input. Now there's so much more, and I'm still learning how to manage it. Is that why you kept wearing the hearing aid? For stability? I nod. Partly that. And partly because I wasn't ready to acknowledge how much things might change. I hesitate, then add. The audiologist adjusted it to a much lower setting. I've been wearing it more for comfort than necessity. He reaches out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers gently tracing the spot where my hearing aid usually sits. Can I hear you without it? Your natural voice, I mean. I realize with a start that he's never heard me speak without the slight distortion that comes from not being able to hear myself clearly. Even now, with my improved hearing, years of habit affect my pronunciation, the cadence of my speech. It might sound different, I warn. I want to hear it anyway. I take a deep breath and speak without my hearing aid, without the habitual adjustments I make to compensate for what I can't hear. I love you, Ethan Mercer, and I'm sorry I didn't trust you with my miracle. His eyes widen slightly. Your S sounds are crisper, and your pitch is more varied. Is it okay? I ask, suddenly self-conscious. It's beautiful, he says softly. It's still you, just a slightly different expression of you. Something loosens in my chest at his words. That's what I'm trying to figure out, who I am with this change. If my hearing continues to improve, I won't be Mara with hearing loss anymore. At least not in the same way. You'll be Mara who experienced hearing loss, he suggests. It will always be part of your story, part of what shaped you. But it doesn't have to define your future. The distinction resonates deeply. I've been so focused on what I might lose, the identity I've built, the adaptations that have become comfortable, that I haven't fully embraced what I might gain. I'm scared of hoping too much, I confess. The audiologist said this kind of regeneration is unprecedented. There's no guarantee it will continue or even remain stable. Then we hope cautiously, Ethan says, moving closer on the sofa. We celebrate each good day without banking everything on a particular outcome. That's all any of us can do, really. I lean against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. When did you get so wise? I had to keep up with you, he replies, his arm coming around my shoulders. You're still the strongest person I know, Mara. Hearing better doesn't change that. We sit in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the tension between us gradually dissolving. Finally, I ask the question that's been hovering in the back of my mind. So, are we still engaged? He pulls back to look at me directly. Do you still want to be? More than anything, I answer without hesitation. A slow smile spreads across his face. Then yes, we're still engaged. But with one condition. What's that? No more secrets. Not about your health, not about your fears, not about anything significant. His expression turns serious again. I need to know you trust me enough to share your whole self, not just the parts you think I can handle. I promise, I say, meeting his gaze steadily. Complete honesty, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult, he nods, satisfied. Then I think we should properly celebrate our engagement. With the champagne that's been sitting here getting warm. I laugh, feeling the weight of the past few hours lifting. I'll get fresh glasses. As I stand to move toward the kitchen, he catches my hand. Mara, I'm really happy for you. About your hearing. I hope you know that. The simple sincerity in his voice brings fresh tears to my eyes. I do now. 6 months later, I stand before the full-length mirror in my parents' guest bedroom, hardly recognizing the woman who stares back. My copper hair is swept up in an elegant updo, tiny white flowers woven throughout. The wedding dress, ivory satin with delicate lace overlay, hugs my figure before flowing gently to the floor. My mother appears behind me, her eyes glistening as she fastens a simple pearl necklace around my throat. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom. I touch the pearls gently. These were Grandma's? She nods. Something old, as tradition requires. We share a smile in the mirror. My relationship with my mother had been strained after the accident. Her desperate need to fix things, my stubborn refusal to be fixed. It took us years to find our balance again. To accept that some things can't be repaired, only lived with differently. Now, as she adjusts the necklace with careful hands, I feel a surge of gratitude for her presence, for her unwavering support through every iteration of my journey. How's your hearing today? She asks, the question now a casual part of our routine. I consider for a moment, taking inventory. Good, stable. After the initial improvement, my hearing had plateaued. Better than before, but not completely restored. My left ear remains significantly impaired, while my right functions at about 85% of normal capacity. The unpredictability had been difficult at first. Some mornings I'd wake to crystal clarity, able to hear the neighbors' quiet conversations through the apartment walls. Other days, sounds would be muffled as if I were underwater. The audiologist explained that this was common with neural regeneration. Progress rarely follows a linear path. Are you wearing the aid today? Mom asks, reaching for the small velvet box on the dresser. I shake my head. Not for the ceremony. Ethan and I decided together. After months of adjustments, both technological and emotional, I've reached a new equilibrium with my hearing. Some days I wear the aid, particularly in crowded or noisy environments where filtering sounds remains challenging. Other days, like today, I choose to experience the world unassisted, embracing both the clarity and the limitations of my natural hearing. A knock at the door interrupts our moment. My father pokes his head in, already emotional in his formal suit and tie. The photographer wants some shots before the ceremony, he says, voice gruff with suppressed feelings. And your sister needs help with Lily's flower girl basket. I'll handle Lily, Mom says, giving my shoulders a quick squeeze before heading toward the door. She pauses, turning back. 5 minutes, then we need to get you downstairs. As the door closes behind her, I take a deep breath, steadying myself. The past 6 months have been a whirlwind of planning, medical appointments, and deep conversations with Ethan about our future. After our confrontation on the night of our engagement, we'd established a new pattern of radical honesty. Some discussions were painful, excavating old insecurities, addressing fears about the future, acknowledging the ways my hearing loss had shaped both our individual identities and our relationship. Other conversations were joyful, forward-looking. We decided to postpone the wedding until my hearing stabilized, not out of fear, but to give ourselves time to adjust to this new reality. Ethan continued to practice sign language with me, insisting it remain part of our private language even as it became less necessary for daily communication. I enrolled in speech therapy to relearn the subtle nuances of pronunciation that years of hearing loss had altered. Ethan sat in on every session, not to monitor or correct, but to witness and support. Together, we rebuilt our foundation, not erasing the past, but incorporating it into a more honest future. My hearing loss would always be part of our story, but it would no longer be the silent third partner in our relationship, the unacknowledged force shaping our interactions. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Mara, we really need to get going," my father calls through the door. "Coming," I reply, making one final adjustment to my veil. The ceremony is intimate. 60 guests gathered in the garden of a historic estate just outside the city. As I stand at the entrance to the garden path, my arm linked with my father's, I can hear the quiet murmur of conversation, the gentle notes of the string quartet, the rustle of leaves in the light spring breeze. The music shifts, signaling the start of the processional. My sister goes first, elegant in deep blue silk, followed by Ethan's brother and his wife. Then my niece Lily, solemn in her responsibility as she carefully drops rose petals along the path. Finally, the wedding march begins. My father squeezes my arm reassuringly as we begin our walk. The guests rise, faces turning toward us with smiles and tears. But my focus narrows to the end of the aisle, where Ethan stands waiting. He looks handsome in his charcoal suit, his dark hair neatly styled, those familiar green eyes fixed on me with an expression of such pure joy that my breath catches. As we draw closer, I notice his hands, steady now, not nervous like they were the night he proposed. My father places my hand in Ethan's, the symbolic transfer of care that feels both archaic and profound. Ethan's fingers curl around mine, warm and sure. "Hi," he whispers, "just for me." "Hi yourself," I whisper back. The officiant begins the ceremony, her voice carrying clearly through the garden. I follow every word without effort, another small miracle in a day filled with them. When the time comes, for our vows, Ethan turns to fully face me, ensuring I can see his expression as well as hear his words. It's an instinctive accommodation, one of many that have become natural for us over the years. The fact that he continues it, even knowing my hearing has improved, fills me with quiet joy. "Mara," he begins, voice steady and clear. "I stand here today, not just to become your husband, but to continue the journey we started 6 years ago. A journey of adaptation, of learning new languages, both literal and figurative, to connect with each other. I promise to keep finding new ways to tell you I love you, whether through words, music, silence, or simply being present. I promise to face whatever changes come our way with openness and honesty. Most of all, I promise to see you, all of you, always, not as you were or as you might be, but as you are in each moment we share." Tears blur my vision as I listen to his words, each one perfectly audible in the hushed garden. When it's my turn, I take a deep breath, speaking without aid or adjustment, my natural voice carrying across the space between us. "Ethan, you have taught me that love isn't about perfection or stability. It's about growing together through every transformation. When I lost my hearing, you helped me find new ways to listen. When parts of it returned, you helped me find the courage to hope again. I promise to bring my whole self to our marriage, my strengths and weaknesses, my certainties and doubts, my past and future. I promise to trust in your love, even when I struggle to trust in myself. And I promise to hear you, not just your words, but your heart, through whatever changes life brings us next." The exchange of rings, the pronouncement of marriage, our first kiss as husband and wife, each moment imprints itself with perfect clarity, stored away in memory. At the reception, as Ethan leads me onto the dance floor for our first dance, I'm struck by a sudden realization. For years after the accident, I'd felt like I was living a half-life, experiencing the world through a filter that dulled everything. I'd resigned myself to this diminished existence, believing it was all I could expect. But as Ethan holds me, close as the music surrounds us, some notes crystal clear, others fading at the edges of my hearing, I understand that life isn't meant to be experienced in absolutes. It exists in the spaces between loss and recovery, in the continuous adaptation to changing circumstances. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asks, noticing my expression. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I answer, resting my head against his shoulder, hearing exactly what I need to hear. He pulls back slightly to look at me, his smile soft and knowing. Which is? I listen for a moment, to the music, to the gentle cadence of his breathing, to the ambient sounds of our loved ones celebrating around us. Then I meet his gaze, seeing in it the same truth I've finally accepted for myself. Everything, I say simply. The beautiful and the broken, the clear and the muffled. All of it, together. He nods, understanding completely as he always has. That sounds about right. As he pulls me close again, continuing our dance, I close my eyes and simply listen. To the moment, to the miracle, to the sound of truth in all its imperfect glory.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.